right, good morning and welcome to Counterpoints. Emily, we've got a little bit of housekeeping to start out with, right?
Yeah, that's right. So we have some exciting new updates. Just make sure to stay tuned to your inbox because those are going to be hitting your inbox next week. Some new updates on the future breaking points, exciting stuff coming down the pipeline. So again, just make sure you stay tuned to your inbox and pay attention to the show next week.
Although
and
it won't be in your inbox if you don't go to breakingpoints.com and subscribe to this show on the premium version.
That's right.
Although we presume that all of you are doing that because why on earth would you not be doing that? We've got some exciting election developments from last night. Angela Alsobrooks upset David Trone, the owner of Total Wine, who spent at least $60 million to lose the Democratic primary for Maryland Senate. Money is not worthless, though. AIPAC did manage to defeat the Capitol cop, Harry Dunn.
Yeah.
Incredible. Democratic voters were faced with a choice of, do we go with AIPAC or do we go with the Capitol cop who fended off the January 6th insurrection? In Baltimore, Annapolis area, they went with AIPAC.
It's sort of, you have to choose between MSNBC and AIPAC.
Except, of course, AIPAC didn't say, do you support genocide? If you support genocide, vote for Sarah Elfreth. They just did a bunch of attack ads and spent millions of dollars supporting her.
So those were primaries that were held last night.
Right.
And we have a great guest coming up, by the way, on the Friday version of this show. Beto O'Rourke is going to be on with us talking about immigration and the border. We're very excited about that. So stay tuned. Again, that hits your inbox if you're a premium subscriber Thursday nights. Otherwise, for everyone else, it's out on Friday mornings. Breakingpoints.com again, though, if you want to be premium.
Beto versus Emily on the border and immigration.
Yeah.
And me just chiming in and saying, why don't we just have completely open borders?
Just three white people talking about the border.
Bunch of Irishmen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, actually. Actually, my grandmother's maiden name is McGrath, so I think I kind of qualify.
Yeah, we're all allowed to participate in this conversation then.
Perfect. Well, we're going to start today on today's show with the economic news because there's been a lot this week between Biden's tariff announcement and actually Jerome Powell was giving remarks yesterday about inflation and man, just some more depressing news on the economy. That's where we're going to start today. We're going to then move to Donald Trump's trial in New York, where a flock of Republicans, a literal flock of Republicans, came to offer their support. We have some sound bites from Vivek Ramaswamy.
They're looking for the jury at lunch to try to just intimidate them into what I don't understand what's going on. It's
like a West Side
Story. How we do criminal trials, but we don't usually prosecute the former president, so it's not going to be normal.
UNC, the University of North Carolina, is refunneling all of its money from DEI into safety, public safety expenses.
Not an Onion headline.
Not an Onion headline, but Ryan, actually some interesting thoughts on that. We have Bill Burr versus Bill Maher, and then Ryan, we have some a very interesting guest that you have set us up with here.
Yeah, and they talked about this on the program yesterday, but I reported on Monday that upwards of 20 medical staff, American medical staff, are currently stranded in Gaza because Israel has closed the Rafah border crossing. They're running low on water. Some of them are on an IV drip. There's massive dehydration, vomiting, diarrhea, and these are the American medical professionals, which tells you just how brutal the conditions must be for the general Palestinians who've been there for 7 months facing these conditions. And so we're going to be joined by a nurse who lives in Oregon. She's from Canada, but she's currently in Gaza, unable to get out, Monica Johnston. If her internet holds up and if the situation allows for the interview, we'll be talking with her later in the program. We spoke to her yesterday to get a sense of what the conditions are, and it's just utterly harrowing from start to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have a monologue that you're going to be talking about more AIPAC stuff.
Yeah, we uncovered some kind of secret AIPAC money flowing into the Portland, Oregon primary. We're going to unpack, how they managed to do that and why they wouldn't just spend and say, "Hey, we are AIPAC, hear us roar."
It's basically an episode of Portlandia, so stay tuned for that.
That's right.
All right, so let's start today with the Fed because Jerome Powell was in Amsterdam yesterday at the Foreign Bankers Association's annual meeting where he commented on the future of interest rates. Let's take a look at what Jerome Powell said.
Question of restrictive policy, as I mentioned, our policy is the highest it's been in quite some time. The rate is, at 5.25% to 5.5% is high relative to recent history. So we think that it's probably a matter of just staying at that stance for longer.
Okay, so let's put this next element up on the screen. This is from the New York Times. This is a headline. Fed holds rates steady, noting lack of progress on inflation. The Federal Reserve left interest rates unchanged for a 6th straight meeting and suggested that rates would stay high for longer. Now, again, a couple weeks later on May 14th, just yesterday, Jerome Powell, you could hear the frustration in his voice, well, to the extent that you can pick up on any sort of emotional connotation from what Jerome Powell was talking about, Ryan. You could hear it. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. He was on this panel to glean from what he was saying that frustration that they have. Did you catch the rest of his remarks there?
Yeah, and he was saying, look, earlier in the year, we were hopeful that we were going to be able to cut rates before the end of the year. Maybe we still will. He's still leaving open that possibility, but then there were some economic indicators in the beginning part of the year that showed it running a little bit hotter than they wanted to, and so they're keeping it at this rate. He also said, look, when people hear that inflation is coming down, they respond by saying, yeah, but prices are still way too high. And he said that is what is guiding them. And the White House is going to hear that and be deeply frustrated because they want to see a rate cut that gets the economy kicking again. You've finally started to see kind of a slowing of the economy, but so much of this is using a tool that was developed when the U.S. had a different economy, a more manufacturing-based economy. And now, so much of our kind of frozen economy is related to real estate and rent that it's really, in some ways, the wrong tool. J.P. Morgan, their top analyst, was arguing recently that keeping interest rates high at this point is actually driving up prices. And curious for your take on this. And everybody has a take on this because everybody interacts with the economy. Everybody's either a renter or a homeowner. So everybody understands all of the different phenomena that we're dealing with. But what he argues is that so many people refinance their homes homeowners refinance their homes during COVID, and now they're locked in these 2.7 or 3% interest rates, so they don't want to move.
Right.
So nobody's selling their homes. That means all of these people are renting who do have the ability to buy but can't because nobody's selling. So that's pushing up rent prices. It's also holding housing prices artificially high as a result. He's saying if interest rates come down, all of a sudden you unlock the supply of housing. And all these people who were waiting to sell are all going to start to sell. Now, there's an alternative argument that says, well, there's so many people who want to buy. What you would do is that you would unlock demand and you would drive prices even further up. So nobody actually really knows what would happen. Nobody knows, do you have more kind of pent up folks who want to sell their homes, or do you have more pent up renters who want to burst into the housing market? And the answer to that question would then decide whether or not housing prices go up or down. And if housing prices go down, rent goes down, inflation goes down. So that is the thing that is really keeping these prices high at this point.
Another quote from Powell yesterday, he says, is inflation going to be more persistent going forward? I don't think we know that yet. I think we need more than a quarter's worth of data to really make a judgment on that. So not good news if you're one of, like you were saying, Ryan, I mean, people are experiencing the economy differently, but if you're somebody who's looking for interest rates to go down for different reasons, many different reasons, that's really not what you wanted to hear. It's definitely not what the Biden administration wanted to hear on that point. But that's where Jerome Powell is right now. And, he said, I don't know if you caught this part. I barely caught this. I almost missed it. He said something like, we know this is hitting people in lower income brackets harder, and they're looking for relief, and that's front of mind, something like that. Of course, it's not just people, but it is disproportionately being felt. The New York Times had a good story.
And that he was talking about the huge surge in prices from 2020 to over the next couple years.
Right.
That really has sapped their spending power.
Inflation, right? Yeah, basically. And it just, the New York Times had a story on that this week, basically how you're feeling it differently if you are in a low income bracket. But all around, it's just bad news for everyone all around, basically.
Right, because everything is much more expensive than it was a couple years ago. Yeah. All your basic expenses.
Yeah.
So by the time now, it used to be like you're scraping to get to the end of the month. Now it's like halfway through the month, you're like, oh God.
And like you said, it's a different economy. So, I think about all of the people graduating right now. I mean, it's May. Everyone graduating right now, going into the workforce and trying to start a life and own a home. I mean, it just feels so completely unattainable, and that's going to trickle into other areas of our politics that aren't just economic, obviously. It's going to express itself in all kinds of different angsts and well-founded angst, because it sucks.
Yeah, and a fascinating and difficult to actually measure part of this has been the immigration surge. And we're going to talk about this with Beto later on the Friday show. But there was this massive labor shortage, and then you had this big surge of immigration. You're still seeing wages going up, even relative to inflation.
Yeah.
But I think there are reasonable signs to say that at some levels the wage growth has slowed.
Yeah.
But a lot of the inflation during the pandemic was related to the labor shortage.
Right.
Supply chains were broken. Restaurants were charging a lot more because they couldn't get people to come to work. There is an inflationary impact of not having enough workers. So in some ways, if immigration grows the entire economy.
Well, he talked about that yesterday too.
Yes, exactly.
He actually
proudly.
mentioned, He actually mentioned the influx of new worker migrants, which we probably disagree on that, and we're going to get to that in our conversation.
The question is whether they're productive economically, and a lot of them are young, a lot of them are working age, a lot of them are here to work, a lot of them came here because they saw the stories of high wages and labor shortages.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.